So, over the past few months, I may have garnered a reputation as a skeptic voice when it comes to the conversation on Baltimore's transit. And really, I've expressed some criticism and skepticism when it comes to transportation in Maryland as a whole, like this video that was literally titled "Finding Useless Stations in Maryland." Fun fact, that video might get a follow-up pretty soon, so stay tuned for more information on that. But I don't want to be all negative. Today, I'm putting my pit beef with Baltimore aside to highlight a station that I think does a lot of things really well. If it weren't for one big flaw, I'd say it would be one of the best stations in the United States. And even with its flaws, it has a lot of good things that other US stations can learn from. And I'm not talking about Penn Station. Penn Station currently serves the MARC Penn line and all Amtrak trains, making it the clear winner when it comes to connectivity. You can reach places as far as Boston, Miami, Chicago, and New Orleans in a one-seat ride. And there are local trains down to DC throughout the day, every day, except for holidays. But Baltimore has another train station. And if we put Penn Station's connectivity aside, I'd argue that this station has several strengths that Penn does not. Of course, I'm talking about Baltimore Camden Station. Camden Station opened in 1857 by the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, the oldest railroad in the United States. They had previously served their namesake city of Baltimore at the Mount Clair Station, the site that is now the B&O Railroad Museum. The Mount Clair Station was historically significant for many reasons, including the fact that the first ever telegraph message was received here in 1844. But it wasn't located centrally enough for the B&O, so they moved to Camden. Camden served as the B&O's main Baltimore station for decades. It hosted President Abraham Lincoln's inaugural train and his funeral train. In 1896, the B&O opened the Mount Royal Station to facilitate train service to Philly and New Jersey, but Camden remained important. Today, the B&O no longer exists, but Camden Station is still served by the MARC Camden Line, a commuter rail service which uses tracks owned by CSX to connect to Washington, D.C. With both the Penn Line and Camden Line, Baltimore and D.C. are one of the very few city pairs in the U.S. with more than one rail connection between them. There are two main reasons why I consider Camden Station to actually be really good. The first reason is its location. Train stations are most useful when they are somewhere people want to be. Camden Station is right by downtown, by the Inner Harbor, and around several residential neighborhoods like Federal Hill. Even more, the platforms lead you to Camden Yards, the baseball stadium home to the Baltimore Orioles. Having a train station this close to a ballpark, plus all the food and entertainment venues around it, it's golden. It makes these high-foot traffic venues accessible by transit, even for people coming from the suburbs. But Camden has another superpower. What if you don't need to go to one of the locations that's in walking distance? You'll want to connect to further transportation, and nowhere is continuing your trip easier than here at Camden Station. This station is served by the Baltimore Light Rail, which serves as a north-south corridor from the airport through the suburbs, through downtown, and into the suburbs again. And from the MARC train to the light rail, it requires nothing more than a simple cross-platform transfer. No stairs, no concourse, no hassle. The commuter rail tracks have even been sunk so that the platform is level with the light rail. I do think it's important to mention that if you're coming from the MARC train and you want to go downtown, you will have to cross the light rail tracks because the cross-platform transfer is to the southbound light rail. But reversely, if you're taking the light rail from the city and you want to transfer to MARC, that's super easy. People often talk about how bad transit is in Baltimore compared to many of its peer cities. That makes it all the more impressive that such an effective transfer exists here, of all places. I can only think of a few other places in the US that have this, and even in the entire world, it's quite rare. Usually, transferring between modes requires at least a little bit of walking. Baltimore Penn Station, which is far enough away from downtown that a trip on the light rail is necessary, it has a light rail branch that serves it, but that hasn't been used in years. And there's seemingly no communication on when it could possibly reopen. So Camden is definitely winning there. But there is a catch. Ridership at Camden Station is quite low, and that is because of one major flaw. See, you can have a station in a desirable location. You can make the connections to local transit as easy as possible, but people won't use it if trains don't serve it. And for most of the time, they don't. Only the MARC Camden line serves the station, and the Camden line only runs on weekdays, Monday to Friday. There are 6 trips to DC between 5 and 8 in the morning, and 3 trips in the afternoon between 3 and 6. It's about the reverse for the trips coming into Baltimore. So, except for these specific people going to these specific places at these specific times, Baltimore Camden Station is pretty useless for anyone else. Which is a shame because it does so many things right. When you think about it, with the way that land and construction costs are these days, cities that don't already have a conveniently located station or easy transit connections will likely never get them. Baltimore Camden has both, but with so few trains, it's going to waste. Now, this might change in the future because as part of MARC's growth plan, they announced that they want to run half-hourly service on the Camden line in 5 to 15 years. Only during rush hour. Outside of that, it would be replaced by a bus. But more interestingly, they are designing the Penn Camden connector, a short spur that would let 1 train per hour of the much more frequent Penn line go to Camden Station instead of Penn Station. This suggests that within 15 years, there may be hourly service to DC from Camden Station, just not using the Camden line. An interesting development to keep our eye on. Anyway, this was a short video about Baltimore Camden Station. I do think it's interesting that such a station, which really is not living up to its potential, can still hold so many lessons for us to learn from. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video or learned something new, please subscribe to Trains Are Awesome. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.